Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Comics. This time around, I am trying a new camera setup, and hopefully, we are whoop, fixing some of the issues that we've had in the past, especially with the lighting. I've been told that in the past, I've been dark. I've looked dark. So, hopefully, this will take care of that, and the new camera setup, the new lighting, and everything will be better. Okay, so today we are finishing with Batman's Contagion story arc. And this time around, we are going to be doing a little intermission. I was saving this until next time. I did not want to spoil what I would be doing next Tuesday, but the situation has made it totally impossible not to address this. And the thing is that I will be talking about African American superheroes, black superheroes. Yes, I know I said last time that politics has no place here, but this is not about politics. This is about humanity. This is about a group of people who have been asking for the same thing for over almost 300 years to be treated like human beings. So that is what we should give them, and that is motivating me to dedicate a special episode of Let's Talk Comics. Episode number 5 will be about black superheroes, and we'll talk about it. But for now, let's finish with the other current affair that is dealing with this, which is Batman's Contagion storyline, and we've got this scene. This is pretty much where we left off last time with Catwoman, and I said I wasn't going to cover it, but this is the only bit that I'm going to show you. This is the last page, the absolute last page of Catwoman number 32 from 1996. Um, that issue is called Fever Pitch, and it's Contagion Part 9. And this is after Catwoman has gone through a lot of uh, misadventures and misfortunes, going down to Florida to find this Inuit. For those of you who don't know it, the Inuit are the natives of northern Canada and Alaska, more commonly known as Eskimos. This Inuit girl who survived the plague, and she is the third survivor from the outbreak. We've seen the death of one, and we've heard of the other one who killed himself in the most ridiculous of ways. And then we've got this girl, sorry, from the Inuit, who had moved to Florida to study, and she was with her boyfriend and whatnot. Catwoman drags her all the way to Gotham to stop the plague, and then Batman tells her it's useless because the blood of a survivor of the outbreak is not enough to produce a vaccine. It is um, it is something that we learn in this issue. You got to remember this is an 11-part story arc, and this is part 9. So we're only 2 issues away from finishing the Contagion story arc, and Batman is saying that we're only now finding out that the blood of survivors to the plague, to the outbreak, is not viable to solve or to create a vaccine. And you can just imagine how devastated they are. And I love Jim Ballin's art in here, how we got Catwoman in the forefront, this Inuit girl who's called Leonore in the middle, and then we have Batman with absolutely no features. The only thing we can see of Batman are his white lensed eyes. There's no definition. He's a complete shadow. This is Batman and Catwoman's book, and in the background we have Dick Grayson looking very blue, very somber, but you can see the contrast between Nightwing and Batman and the color scheme in that scene. And it is something that is worth mentioning how Nightwing, despite being a less flashy and showy costume than Robin, is still not as dark as Batman, as the Dark Knight. Um, so that's where we leave off Catwoman. And for those of you who don't remember, whose memory is not great, or who didn't join us for episode um, episode 3, then I have to tell you that at the end of last episode, we discovered that Robin, Tim Drake, is sick with Ebola Gulch A, which is um, the unfortunate result of him fighting and being susceptible to the disease. Now, now we know Robin is sick. There's no possibility of making a vaccine out of a survivor's blood. What, oh, what is the Dark Knight to do? It's one of those situations that are highly, highly complicated. Batman has a knack for getting into situations like that one. And, well, we've got Azrael number 16. Now, last week or 2 weeks ago, I told you I normally don't read Azrael. I don't have Azrael comics, but I went ahead and got my hands. This is a loan from a friend who has the book. I asked for a loan for Azrael number 16 just to bring it because this is a pivotal pivotal book in the Contagion storyline. And it is pivotal mostly because the story pretty much ends here. Even though the last official book of the Contagion storyline is a Robin book, the real ending of the story comes in Azrael number 16. And I just have to share with you guys the cover of Azrael 16 because this cover is one of those things that you see it and you're like, oh my God, what did they do? And it's the illustrators playing with us a little bit. I don't think I need to really explain what the image is showing us here, but I do have to point out one very important thing, and it's that Robin is all bones. He is not uh, flesh and blood. He's there's no flesh left. This is a body that's been dead for quite some time. Um, so you see this, but it gives us that sense of, oh crap, what's going on here? Are they really gonna kill Robin? Are they gonna kill Tim Drake? Just like that? Well, let's certainly hope not. At least for those of us who are reading it in the future, we know that's not the case. We know that Tim Drake will come back and he will continue for a few more years, being Batman's partner, being Bruce Wayne's partner. But as you can see, just imagine, just imagine what it would have been like walking into a comic book store in 1996 and seeing this cover right there. Azrael going with that helpless no argument, and I'm fighting with God and whatever it is, and especially if you know the story of Azrael as a member of a religious sect and order. And you have Robin on the ground with that creepy looking symbol in the back. Um, well, just imagine, just picture it. Um, what you would have might have felt. You would run. You would definitely run to the store and get it because it's something that it's going to affect you. Now, I don't have a lot of images for Azrael. I really don't have a lot. Sorry about this. Got a message that I had to text out. All right, so it is something, and the opening lines and the opening artwork. Unfortunately, as I said, I don't. Since this is something that somebody lent me, I can't show the entire thing. But the artwork of Batman with Nightwing behind, but this time around, we do see Batman's face. We see Bruce Wayne's lower half of his face. And the text that he says is, "We've failed, all of us. Gotham is doomed." Now, one interesting thing that you have to remember here is that Azrael is written by Dennis O'Neil. And Dennis O'Neil and Joe Quesada created Azrael. And Dennis O'Neil is the editor of the other Batman books. And here the editor is Archie Goodwin. So we have the editor of the overall editor of the Batman series and the Batman story arcs creating a comic book working on the Azrael, telling a part of the story as the writer. Now, the pencils are masterfully done by Barry Kitson, inks by James Pascoe, the colorist is Demetrius Basoukas. Now, somebody told me the other day off camera in between episodes that I should definitely mention out the rest of the people involved in separations, letterings, and things like that. The problem I have with that is that separations are done by companies at this point in time. They're no longer individual people. But I do have to give kudos to Ken Bruzenak, who is the letterer. He's the guy in charge of writing. It's handwritten, and that is something that has still amazed me. And in the 1990s, there's still it would have been so easy to move away from the hand lettering and going into digital fonts and they didn't do it. They remained with a guy who has an amazing handwriting and that's what they do. So we have the start of the story where we have Catwoman and Batman talking over this Inuit girl and trying to figure out is there a is there a cure? We can't make a vaccine out of this. And in the meantime, we get some amazing artwork that gives us an incredible idea of just how devastating this storyline is. This is Alfred Pennyworth talking to Tim Drake. And this is Tim saying to Alfred, it's looking bad, right? And Alfred says, like, I'm not gonna lie to you. It is. And this is Tim Drake basically dying and saying to Alfred, like, do me a favor. If my dad lives through this, tell him for me about me being Robin. Tell him I'm sorry I lied to him and that I don't love Bruce more than him. That is some very profound conversation and dialogue right there because one of Tim's greatest fears is that his dad is jealous of Bruce because Tim spends a lot of time with Bruce. Now, you got to remember here that Tim is an only child. His mother was murdered. His dad has been crippled um, in the same events that led to his mom being killed. And, well, his dad doesn't really know Tim and doesn't really understand Tim. Tim is the son of a millionaire, but he goes to a public high school. He still goes to public high school, and he still mingles with everybody in Gotham County. And he's an outsider in more ways than one. And now um, he's dying, and his dad doesn't know. And this storyline, this whole Tim and his and dad relationship is going to be so much more complicated. Now, in a scene that will eventually become more familiar, um, we get that troops, the National Guard, and the Army is called to pretty much seal off Gotham City. And the troops are stationed in the bridges. They're keeping the city isolated and nobody can come in or out. And then we change scenes completely and we leave Gotham to go to an undisclosed location. And if you are like me, who has not been reading up on the Azrael comics, then you are definitely not going to know where they are. Um, but they are in some fancy mansion, and there's there's a few things here and there that you'll catch on. But we come into this very familiar scene, and we have Jean-Paul Vallée, whom we haven't really seen. If we were not following Azrael, we haven't really seen too much of since um, Knight's Quest, and he gave up the mantle of the Bat. And well, we got this homely scene. He's with a girl sitting next to him. This guy is sitting in the back, and they're talking about the virus and the shape of the virus of the strain. And well, one thing that is interesting is how familiar looking, how homely looking this whole scene is. But at the same time, they're talking about a virus that is called the apocalypse virus, for crying out loud. You know, it's not something that you can just go, oh yeah, yeah, it's a virus, it's normal. But you see the virus, and if you've been paying attention, kids, you will probably realize that the virus is very similar to the symbol that was on the cover behind Robin's corpse. And for those of you just tuning in, because I can see a couple of people joining us now, yes, in the cover of this issue, Robin is a corpse, dead, skeleton. So, and they're holding this entire conversation about where the virus came. And this is where the entire Azrael story goes so far away from where we normally are. And it's that the virus has been engineered. And here we discover that all those conspiracy theories that we've heard before are indeed true. And the virus was created and released by the Order of Saint Dumas, this mysterious religious order that Jean Paul belongs to. And they call it the sin cleanser. They don't call it the apocalypse virus, they call it the sin cleanser. And one brother of the order took the virus from their laboratory without permission from the rest of the order and released it on the world. He made a test. He's the guy responsible for everything, for the contagion in Greenland and the entire outbreak. And he's the one. And now we find out also that that the first patient zero in Gotham was also a member of the, as they call it, the ancient and venerable order of Saint Dumas. Right? He gave it to Maris, who was an acolyte in the order. He wasn't a knight. He wasn't one of the big guys in the order. He was just a an acolyte, right? And well, still, it was released on purpose in Gotham. And the real kicker is that this guy gets killed because they release a pair of very mean looking dogs on him. And again, the artwork is magnificent, and we have this guy go like, "No, no, I beg you," and we can see the expression on the face and the panic and everything. It's really, really strong, and we get a an Emperor Palpatine esque face coming out in the pages of Brother Rolo, which is quite an amusing name. Um, kind of creepy though. But this guy, Brother Rolo, is the guy who orders everything around in the Order of Saint Dumas. And as you can see on his face, it's in shadows and only his eyes come through. And that smile. And he just ordered a guy to be dismembered by dogs, by sicking dogs in them, in a very, very sadistic and cruel way. And this is the tone of the Batman stories. We're starting to get these many dark and complicated characters coming out in the Batman stories. In the background, they are not there right then and there, but they are coming out, and it is a an interesting turn. But then Jean Paul, while all this is happening, Jean Paul realizes that he's seen the form of the virus before. He's seen that symbol, and so he pulls out the books, and I mean books that are notes and things that he took from the lab of the Order of Saint Dumas in Africa. And of course, they're in a sacred, secret language. But this girl who is with Azrael, who is also a defector, she's also left the order. She magically is one of 3 dozen people on the entire planet. We're talking about 36 people amongst probably 3 billion at the time, 1996. They weren't 7 billion, they were around 3 billion. And she's one of those 36 people in the world who can read that language very conveniently, which is, of course, obvious. And I am getting some feedback here that my volume is down. Let me see if I can fix it a little bit. Please, guys, let me know in the chat if my voice has improved, if not, or not. All right. In the meantime, um, we return to Gotham City, and we can see again Batman, right? Because what they have found, what Jean Paul Valley and his team have found, is that there is an antidote. It's not a cure, it's not a vaccine, it's an antidote. And they've had it, the Order of St. Dumas has had it all along. And we come and we find Batman having a conversation with Catwoman. right? While in the background, we know that they are working on deciphering these notes and probably bringing the cure to Gotham. And again, we get some major cape action going in the illustration of Batman in his rooftop conversation. Because, of course, where else could Batman and Catwoman have a conversation if not on the rooftops of Gotham, right? And here we have some beautiful eyes. And this is one of those things that's always fun in comics, how these masks we know. Now, today, we know they're made of Nomex and Kevlar and graphene or whatever is a high tech bullet stopper material at the time when the comics are being written. But still, they somehow manage to get the facial expressions and they get all these wrinkles around the eyes and all that. And that brings me to a very regrettable moment in the history of the Batman when the bat suit had nipples in one of the movies. I'm not even going to mention which movies, but there was absolutely no need to put nipples on the bat suit ever. And that's an image that many of us will not want to remember. But if we saw the movie, we all do. Luckily, it was only on Batwoman and on Batman and Robin, not on Batgirl. She did not have nipples on her suit. That would have been even more awkward. Here we have the Cape of Batman. Again, organic. It's Azrael. It's an Azrael comic. It's again that very as if it has a life of its own, like the Spawn cape that is indeed alive because it's Hellspawn and it's necroplasm and whatnot. Here we have a little bit of that, and we have this huge shadow in the background behind Batman. Now, another interesting fact is the conversation that they're having is that Catwoman is telling him like, "Nope, I'm not a good guy," but she has spent the last two or three appearances, both in her book and in other books like Robin and Batman, being the good guy, right? Helping Batman. Always, of course, with the excuse that she's after the reward and the money. And but at this point, it's hard to read Catwoman, and that's the beauty of this Catwoman. And to understand it, we have to go a little bit back, and it is that before um, the Crisis on Infinite Earths back on 1985, we had this relationship um, between Catwoman and Batman, but also between Selina Kyle and Bruce Wayne. It was a little bit too complicated. It was getting a little too much because, after all, Catwoman is a thief. She's a criminal. She is the antithesis of everything that Batman stands for, right? And they're in the Batcave and they're in the rooftops of Gotham having this new conversation. And this new Catwoman is very different than that highbrow thief and high society thief that she's been for the past. But she's still a good guy, like a good gal deep down. And it's interesting. It's interesting to see how how things how things are shaping up and later on things will change even more. And when we know about parallel Earths and whatnot, there are parallel futures where indeed Catwoman and Batman are are married and have children, and there's this whole other storyline there that I'm not going to get into. Now, unfortunately, I can't show you all of the images, but there's some very gruesome. And one thing that I have to say about the Azrael comics is that the blood is red. It is not green. It is not blue. It is not darkened. It's red. It's a bright, brilliant red, and we've seen it, right? It's not disguised, and you can tell that this is a comic that was born after the Comic Code's authority um, had passed its time, and a few more liberties were taken. But the interesting thing is that it still carries the Comics Code seal on the cover because it was still a nominal thing, but its heyday is done. They're no longer the be all end all of regulation on comic books. And we have this storyline has a lot of very graphical elements that would not have been accepted earlier in the decade or much less in earlier decades in the 1980s or 70s. And like that shot of Robin with blood coming out of his nose and his pores and very, very graphical. Now, there's one very important dialogue, piece of dialogue here that I just have to share with everybody that's watching right now. And it's Alfred Pennyworth talking to Tim Drake. And he says that I'll be next, talking about the infection and dying. I'll be next, I suppose, along with millions of my fellow men. And then here's the real kicker. Batman, Robin, Nightwing, Azrael, Huntress, and the entire Gotham City police force, not to mention the National Guard, a most formidable force, the most formidable ever assembled, all as helpless as babies. This time, and in the next page, in the next panel, he says that the I fear the forces of evil will prevail. And right next to that image, to Alfred saying the forces of evil will prevail, we have the Order of Saint Dumas talking. They're talking about a guy, Brother Liha, who has been tied up and left in a refrigerator by Azrael. They're referencing earlier issues, and here a lot of people complain about the exposition in comic books, but when you're not a follower of one specific comic book and you buy it because it's part of mm, a larger story arc like this one where we have Batman bringing in Azrael and Catwoman and Robin and Detective Comics, and later on in other Batman story arcs we'll even bring in Nightfall, and No Man's Land will bring Nightwing into the whole story arc, and it'll even bring a little bit of Superman into it. Um, so here, when you have something like that, and you know that there are readers who are not following the main books, exposition is good. And this is this guy telling them that um, this brother Liha, who has been sent for, is saying that my men deserted me after Azrael destroyed my security systems, drove away the dim abyss, and locked me in a refrigerator. It took me a day to break free with a meat hook. And then he realizes that for a bad guy, he doesn't sound very mean. He's not sounding very strong and powerful. And he goes on like, oh, never mind that. So you mentioned Azrael. So they have been sent on a mission to stop Azrael because now they know where they are. And we're getting into the storyline of Azrael, and it's they're trying to hook new readers into Azrael. But with me at least, it didn't work. Yeah, that whole secret society, religious mumbo jumbo thingy doesn't appeal to me. Not enough to follow Azrael, who is a character that I have serious reservations with and serious issues with. So I will just not engage in the Azrael books. I'll just not do it. Simple. Now, we are back to Jean Paul Vallée. They have found the formula for the antidote to the virus, right? And it is mostly an alchemical formula. That's pretty much what they say. And of course, as and it has to happen like this, they write it down on a pad of paper and they give it to Jean Paul, who's suiting up as Azrael, and they're questioning, well, where's he going? He's like, I have to take the translation to Gotham City. They're telling him, well, it's surrounded by the National Guard. How are you going to get through those lines? And she, very confident, this Lila, says that an army could not, but he will. He is Azrael. Well, yeah, he was Batman at one point, but still, although one thing I do have uh, to say is that Azrael has a pretty cool costume. Regardless of what I think about the character himself, he has an amazing costume. It is very, very, very cool costume. And right here we can see it, and the big fist and the mask and the cape flowing in the back. And the most important part is he should have waited. I had something to tell him. What he's about to do, it's pointless. So we know from the past that Robin is dying. Vaccine cannot be synthesized by or from the blood of survivors. Now, Jean Paul Azrael has an antidote or an antiviral cure, and he's going off to Gotham. And this guy who helped translate the antidote is saying that what he's doing is pointless, and it's so unnerving. Then a little bit more of the Azrael storyline that we don't care about. We get some ass kicking, and it's wonderful. And then he calls Lily, tells them that, dude, the order is coming after you, get ready. And he goes on and runs the blockade of the National Guard and makes it into Gotham by diving into the harbor. He comes out. Um, there's this whole thing going on, and he drives all the way to Gotham Medical Center and he gives the cure. And here is one of those reasons why I don't particularly like this character in this series. It's a little. I mean, this is a series from the 1990s. I was a teenager in the 1990s, so this should have appealed to me. But it's a little too anachronistic for my taste. Here's this guy in the 1990s with a wad of paper. Dude, we had floppy disks back then. You know, 1.14 inch, 1 and 1/14 inch floppy disks. They were hard. They were plastic. In 96, a guy like Azrael, with the amount of money that he has, because he is also loaded, would have had a CD, and hospitals would have had CD readers. Come on, dude. Paper? Really? But that's just him. He runs with paper. Now, it is funny, and that will lead on to something even funnier later. But then the last page is the real kicker. We get this nice shot of Wayne Manor darkened. It doesn't look like anything that you would see in any of the Batman books, but it's there, and it says, Alfred, good news. And we don't know who is talking. And then we see it's Nightwing. The people at Gotham Med have found a cure. I've got the formula. We have everything we need to do right here in the cave. We'll have Robin on his feet in no time. And then he walks up to the bed and, hey, where is Robin? And this is one of those scenes. Remember the cover, right? In the cover, Robin is a corpse, and we're getting this scene that, I mean, it's pretty heartbreaking to see this. Hey, where is Robin? Don't tell me. And Alfred's silhouette against an image of the Joker. Yes, you're too late. And at the bottom, to be concluded. And I can just imagine the letterer using one of those rulers that had the letters cut out into them with a pen, just making sure that the letters to be concluded are all square and perfectly rounded out. And if you're younger than the 2000s, then you never probably have used a stencil ruler like this one. But anybody my age or older will definitely relate to having one of those things to help you make beautiful writing in your notebooks. And it was the cover of your notebooks in high school and college. It was with the pen, and it was fun. And I could just totally see that happening. But beyond that, in the background, we have this Joker image behind Alfred's silhouette saying, "Yes, you're too late," pretty much giving us the impression that Robin's dead. But the shock and the awe comes later when we find out that Contagion number 11 is in Robin number 28. So, how can the Robin book be the conclusion when the main character is dead? Right? And in the cover, we have Tim Drake in his Robin outfit, full of these little pustules on his face and all red and bloody and ugh, yucky. But come on, he's there. So, Robin is in the cover, and we start with a one-page shot. And the title is of this is Bitter Dregs. Like when you're drinking tea, and at the end you get those the last bits of the tea leaf, and it's bitter, and you get all those tannins in your mouth, and it's kind of yucky. Those are the bitter dregs. That's what you're getting. And here you've got Nightwing going like, oh, but the research lab at Gotham Med has come up with a cure and they're distributing it right now. And you're telling me it's too late. And Alfred is saying with a very serious expression, and I can just hear him with his posh British accent, probably going something like, "Too late to do, Master Timothy, the slightest bit of good." And then we have a voice coming off from the side, and we don't know whose it is, that says, "That was in poor taste, Alfred." And lo and behold, it's Tim Drake speaking. And Nightwing turns around and goes like, "Tim!" And Tim is saying, "Cheap shot, Alfie." And then Alfred, and you got to remember, Alfred is an actor. He's a thespian, and he's proud. And he's one of the people who taught Bruce how to act. So come on, he's the guy's pretty good at it. And he says, "How often does one get the opportunity?" I can just imagine him being relishing it. But then he's cured, and he's like, "But how can he be cured if I just got the antiviral formula?" And he's coming with papers on his hand, again with the goddamn papers. But this time, um, and he tells them that, "Hey, we got the formula from, and they got it from some mysterious benefactor that Bruce already knows as Jean Paul." And he was in Azrael, and he says it, Tim says, but he was in his Azrael mode. And when he's like that, he thinks kind of medieval. And then Bruce explains it like he thought the fastest way to get the formula to us was to run the blockade around Gotham. And Tim complimented, "Dramatic but clueless." His mystery pals faxed the formula to several numbers even before he reached Gotham Medical Center. One was Wayne Tech. So Bruce, of course, got the fax and immediately cooked up the antiviral and gave it to Tim. Now, we have this little bit of fun, and it's lighthearted, and that goes with the whole Robin comic book attitude, and it's that he has it's a much more lighthearted comic. You got to remember, Tim is a teenager, and he's a guy who brings teenagers into the Batman mythos. He's a guy who's bringing the teenage reader, because a part of the story has to deal with teenage problems. So Batman and Nightwing jump into the Batmobile and drive out, and Tim's left behind. They tell him like you can't go. You just had this nearly fatal disease. You're staying in bed, and of course he is not going anywhere. And he says, you know what? I should probably get out of here. And he goes down. He's getting ready to go out, and there's a priority email. Right? Remember, there's no cell phones. There's um, no WhatsApp yet. No instant messaging. No, at most there would be ICQ and AOL, and not even MSN Messenger was a thing in 1996, I believe. But he looks at the email and says that there's a gang in Tricorner, um, holding the National Guard and police off with snipers, and they're not letting people through to distribute the cure in a neighborhood. So what does he do? This recently up from the dead, from the brink of death, he puts on his Robin outfit and he says, I should radio Batman and Nightwing, which would, of course, be the sensible thing. But if any of these people were sensible, they would definitely not be running around the world in spandex and Nomex and God knows what else, facing bullets and all the things that they do. But thank God they're not sensible people. So instead of radioing Batman and Nightwing, he thinks that they've got a lot on their hands with Gotham already, and he runs into the Redbird, which is his cart. And we get some very, very, very cool art, and the artwork in Robin. And I probably should have told you guys who the artists are. And in the case of Robin, the writer is Chuck Dixon, like always. The artists are Mike Wieringo and Stan Voch, and Adrian Adrienne Roy is in charge of colors, and Tim Harkins of the letters. Denny O'Neil is back in his seat as editor instead of um, writer, as he was in the previous issue of Azrael. But the art here by Voch and Vieringo, and I'm pretty sure I'm butchering the name, and I'm not doing justice to Vieringo, um, has a quality to it that is a little bit campy. It's a little bit um, goofy, and I kind of like it, and it kind of suits the mood of the Robin comic book. Um, and here we have a wonderful presentation of Marion Grange, who is the new mayor of Gotham City, shouting, going to hell in a handbasket. And we have from off the frame Armand Kroll. The last time we saw Major Kroll, he was bleeding in his eyes. He was sick with the virus. He was on the brink of death. But just like Robin, he has recovered fully. He has made one of those miraculous, instantaneous recoveries that, of course, only happen in comic books. You know, people don't just lie at the brink of death and 5 minutes later are up on their feet. But he's sitting behind his desk with an ivy on his arm and a very cute looking nurse behind him. And the police commissioner, which is I mean, he's just useless. Totally, totally useless. He's the guy we saw at the very start of the crisis, standing on a chair, getting fitted for a formal police uniform. And it was, yeah, just sad. Absolutely sad. But he's there in the background. And Major Kroll, where it says, the city was almost wiped lifeless by a plague, which I myself contracted, and then nearly burnt to the ground by riots. And all you can do is come in and tell me the situation is bad? Spare me. And she said, like, nope, I can do better than that, troll. I can have the governor move up my inauguration and have me sworn in as mayor. and I did that this morning. You mean I mean you can hit the bricks and take your pet moron with you. And she's, of course, referring to the police commissioner after what she will promptly call Jim Gordon, reinstate him as commissioner, as police commissioner of Gotham City, while the National Guard pretty much drags Armand Kroll out of the city. And here we go into that bit of the comic of the Robin comic books that is not always as cool, which is the human side of it. And of course, I'm seeing it from the distance, and it's but at the time, it would have appealed to teenage me to see Tim calling his dad and telling him that he's all right, that he was cut off by the quarantine in the city, and he stayed in a place that Bruce has in the city, and that the power's been out, and the phone lines were down and there was no way. And of course, he's calling him from the Redbird car. And anybody who has ever made a phone call from a cell phone in a car will know that that is a dead giveaway. They'll hear the traffic and everything. And so he is calling his dad. He hung us up and he starts thinking. And then he calls his girlfriend, Ariana, who is just coming out of the shower with the towel wrapped around her head and a bathrobe. And it's this whole campy, little, cute little thing. And the last panel of the page is, I love you, Tim, into the phone. And Tim replies on this disembodied voice outside of the page, I love you too, Harry. And we know that this is a very complicated relationship because he hasn't told her that he's Robin. And now he's made it into Gotham City and the riots, and we're going back into the Contagion storyline. And the police are facing off these gangsters who are saying that nobody comes up East Street lest they pay the toll. You pay it in cash or you pay it in blood. And they fire at the police. And of course, everybody is there, and it's nasty. And we have this really cool image of Jim Gordon, mustache, with a shotgun that he has just taken from Harvey Bullock, just pumping the shotgun. And that's a very 90s thing, like the and it's a shack that we see on the page right there. This is just in case negotiations break down. And Renee Montoya will ask, what kind of cockroach does that to his own neighbors? And of course, we have Bullock saying, the kind that's willing to kill them slowly by selling them drugs. And here's your mandatory 1990s say no to drugs, just say no punchline in your comic books, which was part of that whole wholesome, let's make comic books family friendly. But come on, guys, really? We're in the midst of all these things, you know? And then we go into this bedroom, and there's this boy who is seeing his dad die. And we don't see the dad, we only see the the hands and the legs. We don't see his face or anything. But this kid is looking out the window saying, like, why haven't they come? They've said that there's a cure and they're coming and giving the cure to everybody. Why don't I have the cure? Why don't my family have the cure? And he's going like, oh, poor me. And the dad is saying, like, come away from the window, son. There may be more shooting. God spared you this disease, but you ain't bulletproof. And then there's this whole conversation of but you and Mama and Jody are good people. What did we do wrong? And then the dad says the sentencing phrase, we moved to this wicked city. And again, we have Gotham in this. They're just setting everything up for Gotham later in the future. Now, we go back. Robin is not seeing this, but it's as if he was, but he's too out of it, and he just leans against the wall, falls asleep until who should wake him up but Catwoman, right? And he shouts at her like, Catwoman! And she's like, a little louder, please. I don't think they heard you in Metropolis. And again, we can see that this is the ending of the story. It's releasing the tension. Everything's coming to a head, and we have this nice glowing smile on Selena Kyle's face, going like, "I've been a good girl the last few days. You know, I decided that I don't like these people. At first, I was going to take the ransom, and then I realized they're not going to pay the ransom, so I might as well be a good girl, right?" And she doesn't let Robin help her. She's like, "Dude, you're out of it." But he's like, "Nope. I can't let Catwoman handle this solo." And she breaks into a window, and right behind comes Robin breaking another one. He's almost blacking out, and he's on the ground, really dumb, and saying to himself, "I'm dumb, I'm dumb, I'm dumb. I can't believe I did this. I'm really out of it." He has guns pointing at him, and then Catwoman comes and saves him, says, "Leave the kid alone." And she kicks him and helps him up. And she's like, "Oh, you're really sick." He's like, "Nope, I had the virus, and but I don't have it. You know, it's like, and this is where we see the Tim Drake hero, you know, the heroic Robin, um, and we see Catwoman's face, and he's going like, "It was the clinch," and he still looks sick. He's still sweating, and she's going like, "My God," and he goes like, "But I got the cure. I'm just weak. Like I was at death's door a little while ago. Now I'm all better." But then we have this panel, you know, where Tim Drake says, "I'm better. I'm just tired, but that doesn't matter. Every minute those animals hold this block brings these people closer to dying. So I'm not going to sit by while that happens." And we have Catwoman endorsing him. "I always wondered why Batman took on a partner." And there you have it, folks. That's why Batman took on a partner, because Tim Drake can get up from his bed and nearly get himself killed. But it's those that determination, right? And then he says to Catwoman, "I can put in a good word for you with him after this." And she's like, "Don't you dare. I have my reputation to take care of." They finish mopping up. They get him. They get the cure to the people. And we see the kid hugging his dad, and everybody's getting better. And Tim goes back to his house. And then he comes in and he finds Ariana. And this is the last, absolute last panel of the Contagion storyline. And it's one of those reasons why I say like the Robin comic books sometimes can be so, oh my God. This guy has just faced a bunch of hoodlums who were holding the National Guard and the police at bay with sniper rifles. He and Catwoman just faced them, and he wasn't phased by it. And he was like, "Yes, we got to do this. We have to save these people and get the drug to him." And then he comes back and he's going like, "Ariana?" And he's shocked and he can't believe that he's seeing his girlfriend back in one piece. And she's like, "Surprised?" And as I said before, that is the kind of little story detail that would have appealed to the teenage reader back in 1996. It's like, oops, yeah, she's back, she's here, and it's that whole teenage angst and drama that is there in Robin, and that makes the comic book a little bit um, more relatable. Now, having come to the end of Contagion, I just have to say thank you to everybody who has put up with me for 3 episodes. I didn't think it would take this long, but it did. I might have gone in a little bit more in depth than I originally anticipated, but I've received some good comments. If you want to see more in depth um, coverage like this one, please let me know. Write it down in the comments section right here. And so I can know if you want to see something like this or if you think I should shorten the coverage and cover broader periods in less time. But I'm trying to keep these episodes to 1 hour around to make it short and manageable. So we are down to 1 hour and almost on the dot. We have 4 seconds to go. So, but yes, please let me know down in the comment section if you enjoyed this episode. If you have enjoyed the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I will be doing these live streams on Tuesdays and Thursdays at around 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. So yeah, be sure to join us next week. Don't forget, Tuesday, Black superheroes. We're going to take a look at the black superheroes because right now, this is the time when we have to talk about it and we have to bring the racial discourse up to the forefront. And everybody needs to know that there's just some things that you don't put up with. You know, you just don't put up with that. You know, and every life, every life deserves respect and caring. But right now, more importantly, black people in America deserve a lot of respect. They've been fighting this fight for a long time, and that's why, as an appetite wetter for next week, I leave you with this image of Sam Wilson as the all new Captain America, who is reminding us that America is much more than just us white folks. Guys, this has been Dad.